A recent study has found that the United States is currently lacking enough weapons to fight. This research report was released by CSIS. It contains some really shocking information. Today, let's take a proper look at this. Let's get right into it. In the recent Middle East war, the United States has completely devastated Iran. They struck all of Iran's major cities. They also targeted Iran's key military facilities and factories. Meanwhile, Gulf countries were also attacked, and many US military air defense systems were used. Let's review the US military's main missile stockpiles and the missiles used in this war. CSIS shared data on major weapon system usage in the first 39 days of the war, using US Department of Defense budget information and other sources. First, in the case of Tomahawk cruise missiles, about 3,100 missiles were in stock before the war. In this war, more than 850 missiles were used. That's about 27.4% used. It is expected to take 47 months to replenish this stock. The JSSM missile, which has a range of 1,000 kilometers and costs $1.6 billion per unit, had 4,400 missiles before the war. Over 1 missile per target was used, so about 22.7% were expended. Replenishing this stock will take 48 months. In the case of the JSSM missile, it was developed by the United States in preparation for a possible war with China, but it has been used up at a very high rate. As for the precision-guided weapon for ground strikes, the PRSM missile, only 90 were in stock. It's said that up to 70 of them were used in this war alone. 77.7% were used in this war, and it will take 46 months to replenish them. As for the SM-3 missile, which is an interceptor missile, there were 410 before the war, and up to about 250 were used this time. About 60.9% were used. In the case of the SM-3, CSIS predicts that it will take the longest to replenish, estimating about 64 months. And for the SM-6 interceptor missile, there were 1,160 before, but up to 370 were used this time, which is about 31.8%. It will take 53 months to replenish them. Also, in the case of the THAAD missile, there were 360, but up to 290 were used this time. For the THAAD missile, this war saw the highest consumption rate in terms of percentage. They used as much as 80.5% of their stockpile. It will take 53 months to replenish them. As for the Patriot missiles, there were 2,330 before, but up to 1,430 were used this time. They used up 61.3%, and it's expected to take 42 months to replenish them. On top of that, war spending was enormous, and CSI has estimated that the daily cost alone is close to 1.5 trillion won. As you can see, both major precision strike weapons and defensive interceptor missiles are being depleted at the same time. The decrease in defensive weapons is far more critical. Offensive weapons can be used selectively, but defensive weapons must be used no matter what the moment an enemy attack comes in. If Patriot and THAAD interceptor systems run out quickly, the US military's ability to protect its bases, troops, and infrastructure will become much weaker. On top of that, the most serious issue being pointed out is the production speed. The United States today is not the same as it was during World War II. It's no longer possible to produce weapons as quickly as before. In this Middle East war, missiles equal to years of production were used in weeks. CSIS has assessed that it will take at least 1 year and as long as 4 or 5 years to replenish the weapons that were used this time. To catch up with this pace in a short period of time, it's not enough to simply increase production facilities. The entire industrial structure needs to be reorganized. The US House Armed Services Committee is raising serious concerns about this. Based on the current production rate, it is pointed out that it could take years to restore the missiles and ammunition used this time back to their original levels. This is not a problem that can be solved simply by running the factories more. Since the supply chain for key components, the workforce, and budget approvals all have to align at the same time, the actual recovery speed could be even slower. On top of that, according to an analysis by the Center for Strategic and International Studies, it could take more than 5 years just to replenish these weapons, and this reveals a structural problem. After concentrating military power in one area, the ability to respond in other theaters drops sharply. In particular, Asia, especially the Western Pacific, is a key theater the US has monitored most closely. The biggest risk pointed out is that if a war breaks out in this region, there could be simultaneous shortages of precision strike missiles and air defense interceptor systems. In fact, looking at the scale of missiles used in this war, we can see that these concerns are not exaggerated. Almost all key assets, from long-range strike missiles to defensive interceptors, were consumed at the same time, and some weapons were used at levels far exceeding their annual production. Even if the US tries to increase production capacity in this situation, it will be difficult to solve the problem in a short period of time. Missiles are not simple assembly products. They are made based on advanced technology, complex supply chains, and limited production facilities, so there are structural limits to rapidly increasing production speed. This is why there is analysis that vulnerability in the Western Pacific has increased. Previously, the US maintained the ability to apply military pressure in multiple theaters at the same time, but now, if it concentrates on a specific region, gaps in other regions can occur more easily, especially considering China's large-scale missile forces and A2/AD capabilities. The US may not be able to project enough firepower in the initial stages of a conflict. This gap is not just a matter of numbers, it could become a variable that shakes the very initiative of the war. Above all, what should be noted is that even US assets deployed in Asia have been moved to the Middle East. Because the amount of ammunition used in this war was so large, it was difficult to handle with existing stockpiles alone, and in the end, assets from other theaters had to be brought in. In fact, some of the missiles and ammunition deployed in Asia and Europe were redeployed to the Middle East, and in this process, concerns about regional defense gaps spread rapidly. In particular, the case where THAAD interceptor missiles deployed in Korea were moved to the Middle East and then returned is a very symbolic event. THAAD is a key defensive asset to deter North Korea's ballistic missile threat, and the fact that this equipment was moved to another theater shows how urgent the US asset operations were. Also, 2 Marine Expeditionary Units, about 4,400 troops that were deployed in the Pacific region. Deploying such large forces to the Middle East temporarily reduced immediate response capability in Asia. Allies are bound to react very sensitively to moves like this. In Korea's case, during the THAAD deployment, they made security decisions despite severe economic retaliation from China, a situation called the Korean restriction model. They have maintained the deployment despite significant domestic pressure, so when the movement of these assets was detected without sufficient prior consultation, it was inevitable that confusion and embarrassment would grow. Security assets are more than equipment, they're about trust. If this kind of situation keeps repeating, allies naturally start to have doubts. In a crisis, can the United States really prioritize defending their country? Or is there growing uncertainty that assets could be withdrawn at any time for use in another theater? The White House immediately refuted these concerns. Caroline Leavitt, the White House spokesperson, denied the claims, saying that the United States has enough weapons stockpiled to carry out the Commander-in-Chief's orders anywhere in the world. Nevertheless, concerns continue to be raised. Currently, the United States is helping defense companies boost production to secure more ammunition, even redirecting interceptor missiles meant for Europe to increase its stockpiles. The US government has also asked Congress for an extra $518 trillion budget to expand its ammunition reserves. Additionally, reports say the Department of Defense is talking with major manufacturers like Ford and GM about expanding weapons production. Right now, China is the country we should focus on most. Right now, the United States definitely maintains the capability to wage war, but at the same time, it has become increasingly burdensome to handle multiple fronts. If China exploits this ammo gap, the situation could change entirely. If tensions escalate or conflict erupts in the Taiwan Strait, the US will have to manage both its already stretched forces in the Middle East and respond in Asia simultaneously. The main issue is timing. In war, a quick initial response matters more than how long the conflict lasts. Among military experts, the first 72 hours after the outbreak of war are considered the critical period that determines the overall course of the conflict. If air superiority and maritime control aren't secured quickly, later operations may become highly disadvantageous. However, in a situation like now, where both precision strike missiles and air defense interception systems are lacking, there is a possibility that the initial response itself could be delayed. This could lead to a structural risk of handing over the initiative on the battlefield to the opponent. In addition, we need to look at the strategy that China has been building. China already has large-scale missile forces and anti-access. China has already established an anti-access area denial strategy, or A2/AD system. This strategy is designed to make it difficult for US aircraft carriers and air forces to even approach certain areas. If the US has to confront this defensive network without securing enough missiles and interception systems, the initial cost of breaking through will inevitably be much higher. If losses accumulate during this process, the available operational options may become limited. Ultimately, the current situation is considered much more dangerous because the core elements of the battlefield, timing and initial response capability, are both being shaken. Under these conditions, if there is a country making strategic calculations, it is quite possible that they may see this moment as a clear opportunity.